Hi, everybody. Beth Wietrkowski with Michael Saunders and Company talking to you today. It's a really, really great day. Dorian missed us, thank goodness, and things are pretty good here. It's hot and muggy and heavy today. That's kind of part of our storm system situation here. So today we're going to talk about walkthroughs. What's a walkthrough? A walkthrough is when you, as the buyer, buy a house. The day of or the day before, I prefer the day of, closing, you're going to do a final walkthrough of the house. And what are you looking for? If you have had repairs done to the property, you're checking those repairs. You're checking to make sure they were actually done. Oftentimes what will happen is your seller will either bring to closing or leave on the table things like, or leave on the counter, things like invoices, receipts, manuals, garage door openers, extra keys, things like that for you at the house. It's a lot easier to leave that stuff, bring it into the closing office. And don't forget, a lot of times your sellers will actually sign ahead of time. So that's one of the things we're looking for, is that sort of thing. Now, let's say you have some big repairs to do. Let's say your seller is fixing something in the attic, fixing a window, fixing something with the exterior of the house, something that we're not going to go and look at, like something minor that with the human eye, the non-professional human inspector eye, we can check out. Well, then what's a buyer to do? It's easy. You can oftentimes hire your inspector to re-inspect. They will do it for a fraction of the price that they did the inspection for. What they're doing is they are specifically looking at these items. If you had a fairly large list of things that had to be repaired and your seller agreed to repair them, and especially if they're in areas of the house that we're not going to get into, because let's face it, we're not going to climb in the attic. We're not going to check electric. We're not going to check plumbing. We're not going to check all that kind of stuff. That's not what our expertise is in, either mine as a realtor or you as a consumer. So hire your inspector. Oftentimes they do it for $75, $100 or so, and they will check specifically those items that were called to attention that you had your seller repair. Easy. They can usually squeeze it in. They're not there for very long. And then they'll sign off on it. So you do that. Awesome. You have it signed off on and everything's great. So, but let's say you have a major item and your inspector walks out and goes, this wasn't really fixed. What do? Well, you bring it to the seller's attention. There's a handful of things you can do after that. You can delay closing and have it fixed. I mean, don't forget, in our area here, we have a lot of absentee owners. It could very well be that your seller hired somebody who either did a poor job or just didn't do the job, and your seller is not trying to bamboozle you. I wouldn't even jump to that conclusion. Or it just got forgotten. Moving is a stressful, hairy kind of time, and things happen. Hi, Chris. So what I would do is we would then talk to their agent and say, hey, listen, this didn't get fixed. A lot of times there's things you can do. Money can be held back from the seller's proceeds at closing to continue to repair that item. You can delay closing and give the seller a chance to fix it. A lot of that will depend on your purchasing situation. If it's cash, things are always easier with cash. If it's a loan, things get a little bit trickier. But those are one of those things that we will discuss. I've actually had something like this happen several years ago, closed on a house where we went to do the walkthrough and seller was still there and nothing had been moved out. And there was a pile of trash out on the curb. And the buyers were like, no, we're not doing this. We're not buying this house. You got to move everything out. You got to have it all hauled off because you're not putting essentially a house full of furniture on the curb. That was not a problem they wanted to inherit. And quite frankly, I don't blame them whatsoever. So what we did is we were fortunately able to delay their closing by a couple days. I gave their agent some numbers of some junk haulers that will come and haul off junk. And what they do is they donate to our local charitable organizations. And I shouldn't use the word junk, but things like that. They take the stuff to the dump that needs to go to the dump, and then they take the stuff that can be reused to charitable organizations. And we got that taken care of. So that's what we're going to do. So let's say you are not present, Mr. Buyer, Ms. Buyer. You're not here and you need to have a walkthrough done. Guess what? I can't do it. Here's the reason why. My license does not allow me to make those decisions for you. My license does not allow me to walk into the house and go, okay, the kitchen drawer was fixed, or this was fixed, or the house is clean enough. My license does not allow me to do that. So we do one of a couple things. You either say, that's okay, this has been a great transaction, I don't actually have to have the walkthrough. You can have someone trusted, if you have a friend here, do the walkthrough for you. Or you can hire that inspector to do it for you. There's a lot of ways to handle it, but you just need to understand that technically speaking, I can't do that for you. My license does not allow me to do it for you. There's a refrigerator in the garage and you didn't want that there. Well, if you didn't tell me that, I probably didn't know that. Things like that. Sellers, what are you supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to have all your stuff out. Now, seriously, I get this question asked a lot, and I understand that in different areas of the country, it is different. When we close, whatever day we close on, whether we close at 9 o'clock in the morning or whether we close at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the day of closing, the buyer has possession. The buyer is paying the taxes as of that day, the electric as of that day, any HOE or condo fees at that day. It is their house. Whether we close at 9 in the morning or whether we close at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you need to be out, and you really, really need to be out the day before so that they can come through and do what they need to do. The contract states that the property has to be swept clean. And we both know that that is not a standard of clean, and that's okay. If the buyer is willing to accept it, great. If you're like me, even if the house is professionally cleaned, I'm going to go in and clean it anyways. I can't help it. My mother's a nurse. It's how I was raised. I just can't help myself. And a lot of people are like that. A lot of people say, that's really great. I'm going to go in. I'm going to have my cleaning person go in. I've hired a cleaning crew. I want to clean up myself because I like the products I use. That's fine. So those are one of those things that needs to be worked out. But seller, if you can actually clean the house and do more than swept clean, that just makes the transaction so much better. Then you won't have a buyer sitting in the closing room mad because the cabinets are disgusting and have food stuck to them, or that the bathroom is really, really gross and needs bleach because you haven't been there in a month. Things like that. I really strongly suggest sellers that if you can clean the house, to clean it. It's really a nice thing to do. The contract doesn't state you have to do it, but I think it's really, really in your best interest to create just a smooth transaction and do that for your buyer. Couple other things. Like I said, with the repairs, that's what we're doing. Oh, the other thing we're doing too is, this did happen to me once. One time, early on in my career, there was a bonus room, and the sellers had gotten family members to help. And when they had brought the couch down from the bonus room and the stairs curved, they dropped the couch and put a hole in the drywall. What they did, instead of telling us, hey, we've got a problem, we put a hole in the drywall, let's go ahead and fix it. Hey, Rudy, we'll stick some money aside so we can repaint the wall and patch it, blah, blah, blah. They did their own little patch job. Now, these walls were this really beautiful kind of almost dark green, and it really worked with this house. So they patched it and then had all the white mud everywhere. So, good morning, Rudy. And so the buyers walk in, and they see this big hole about this big in the wall with a bigger hole of mud, of white mud over the green. And then whomever was patching it, I think it was the father-in-law, then went into all the other rooms because he had the mud in his hand and spackled over all the nail holes. So now there was white patching all over the house. And my buyers just kind of freaked out. So what we did in that situation is we brought it to the attention of the listing agent, and we had some money set aside. The buyers came in. I had a really good handyman. This was in another state at that time, and we brought my handyman in, and he smoothed out the drywall because the patching wasn't very good, and then we had it repainted. Sellers paid for it. So if you're in a situation, sellers, where you damage something going out, because let's face it, it happens. Moving is tiring. Maybe you scratch the door, then what you're going to do is let your buyer's agent know. Go, oh my gosh, we messed up, and here's how we're going to fix it. And then that way your buyer walks in the door, there's no surprises, and everybody's happy. So those are just few stories from the trenches, as we like to call them. Basically, in a walkthrough situation, the buyer's coming through to make sure that the property is in the condition in which it was purchased and everything's working. Hi, Dee. Seller, you need to have the property clean. Swept clean is what the contract says. I strongly urge you to do a little bit more than that. Make sure all your stuff is out of the house. And if you did have an error on the way, because it happened to me once when I was moving out of one of my houses, we did some damage and then we told the agent and we actually fixed it. If you do anything like that, make sure you let your buyer's agent know so there's no surprises. It just makes everything much more smoothly. And of course, if you have, as a buyer, if you have repairs that need to be double checked, then what we'll do is we'll send the inspector in the day before, the day of closing, and make sure that those repairs were actually done. So in a nutshell, that's walkthroughs. Every buyer is awarded a walkthrough. They are allowed to have one. You need to make the house available to them at that time frame. And that's how it goes. If you have any questions about walkthroughs, throw it in the comments or PM me. If you have any questions about real estate in general, throw it in the comments or PM me, and I will be back here on Monday to talk about real estate. Have a great weekend. It's going to be hot, hot, hot. Stay hydrated and wear sunscreen. Bye, everybody.